Hey everyone, welcome back to Carrots and Olives. Today I'm going to be doing a fountain pens I'm using and what's currently inked. I haven't done that in quite a while. I felt like I kind of wanted to return to that and be a little bit more consistent because I change out my inks very often. I decided let's do ink samples, swatches of what's in my pens, and these are all the pens I'm going to share with you today. I do have a few more that are inked up, which I put in here in this case, but I don't have really anything special in those. Those are just regular cartridge filled. And then I also have some in here, but I will share that another day. So we're just gonna do pretty much these that are here and then the two that can't fit right now. Let's get started. We're gonna start from left to right, and then also these two. I'm going to be swatching them in here. This is just a Baumkuchen cover, which is really nice. I really like the accents of the undyed leather on the sides, and then also here in the pockets. And I was gonna use the Hobonichi A6 like empty journal, but I think I'm gonna use this one, which I found. This is a A6 journal from Paper Penguin Co. that I purchased a long time ago. I found it and we're gonna use this because there's nothing in it, and I think this is a good start for pen swatching. I have my Tombow brush pen and I'm gonna zoom you guys in. Sorry if my fingers and my hands are dry. To do this the best, I cannot put any type of oil on my hands or lotion because it's going to affect the paper, and I want these to be as accurate as possible when it comes to writing. This is Tomoe River paper, and I'm just going to brush script. Currently inked. I'm gonna try to do my best to write and talk, although that is not my forte. But I think as time progresses, I will get better. So I'm gonna apologize in advance if this video is kind of awkward because there's a lot of silence. I will try to put some music in the super silent long spouts in this video. So let's get started with the first one. This one is my Twsbi, and it is the Diamond Mini Classic. So it's the black with silver trim. I recently inked this up. I've had this pen for a very long time, and I loved it for drawing, and I put it away after a while because the barrel did get stained a little bit. So this one, I'm gonna put in the name of the pen. So this is the Twsbi Diamond Mini. And this is in the extra fine. And it's black and silver trim, which I'm not going to include, but I will do ink swatches, so I'm going to do just a square, I suppose. And this ink is very juicy for an extra fine nib. I found that this nib handles a lot. This is actually a Diamine Shimmering Seas ink. And it shimmers to gold. Which is hard to see with an extra fine nib. It writes really well. I never had to touch this nib or tune it. It's not even scratchy in my opinion. I've had scratchier extra fine nibs, but I think it's really easy to control. And I really love using dark ink. So next I have the Galen Leather limited edition collectible Kaweco. This is in their violet color. I finally got the clip to match and I think it goes really well together. Galen Leather. Kaweco, and this is in the oblique broad, which was a special grind that they offered for this release of the pen. And this is a new to me ink, which I got recently from Van Ness Pens. This is the Ferris Wheel Press ink. It's called Moss Park Green. It has some beautiful shading on, which comes out really well onto my river paper. And this nib is very smooth. Because it's oblique broad, I find that I have to have it tilted, which is okay because I tend to do that anyway with my pens during longer writing sessions. But this ink is so gorgeous, so pretty. When I get new inks, I typically like to put them in two different pens. Usually a pen with a wider nib and then the pen with a finer nib, just to see what it's like. So I do have it in another pen, which I think I also have it in this like inked pens video. So this is something special. This is the Sailor Pro Gear Slim Mini Black. It's a limited edition. It was like one of the very first ones that came out from Nagasawa. It is the pen style memo. So the cap band says pen style memo rather than Sailor 1911. And I ended up switching out the nib with another pen. And the cool thing, as I was experimenting, I switched it to a different cartridge. It was like an international standard cartridge. And I cut it off so that it looks like the Sailor like opened end cartridge. And now it fits on here and allows me to fit it on this small body. Because this nib does not, it fits on here, but if I put a regular Sailor cartridge, which they only have one size, it doesn't fit in this small body. So I cut down the international small cartridge to fit, and it's working fine. There's no leaking. I did this a few hours ago and everything is working well. So I'm gonna call this the Sailor Pro Gear Slim. And this is actually not the original nib, so it is a fine. and it's a steel nib. And the ink I have in here is Colorverse Hayabusa. I always get that wrong. Can't think of it without looking at the name somewhere. It is a pretty glistening purple. I don't know if you could really see the glistening in this fine nib. This is my first Colorverse ink. I don't have any more. It's my only Colorverse ink. And it writes really well. This is the first time I've had it in this pen. And I decided to switch out the nibs of this pen because I'm testing it out. The original nib that is on here, which is a medium fine, dries out really quick in this pen. So I decided to switch it for a nib, sailor nib that I know does not dry out quickly. Although I think the reason it dries out so much is because of the pen body not really keeping it secure, and it's just drying out the nib. So I'm testing it out to see how well it works in this pen. My next pen is the Midori Md Pen, which actually is a good size. My idea of this pen has changed, my thoughts on it. I like it a lot more now than I did when I first got it. I recently changed out the ink. I initially had just a regular cartridge in here, and I still have the cartridge in here. It's just, I changed out the ink. And then this one just has the regular medium nib. And this ink is Pelican Olivine, which is really pretty ink. I adjusted the angle just slightly. So this pen is writing a little bit dry. But when I had the black ink from the cartridge in here, which was just a general international short cartridge, it was writing pretty well. So I'm thinking that this ink may not be wet enough for my liking in this pen. Next we have the Galen leather Skrix fountain pen. This one is in their indigo color, which is like a blue, and I find it to actually write really nice. It has the piston filler, and for a piston filler pen, it has a pretty small nib, but it writes really well. So this is not a limited edition. But it writes really smooth. It has a pretty large ink capacity as well. And I'm not really sure what Skrix means. I think it was a company, an older company in Turkey that has been making fountain pens, if I'm not mistaken. This, I think, is in their fine nib. I want to say fine, but I can't see it on here. I think it's a fine though. Okay, so the ink I'm using is a permanent dye ink that I got from Jet Pens, and this is called Pyrite. It's a gemstone color. It's a really pretty green. And because it's a like permanent water resistant color, I am pretty shocked at how wet it writes, in my opinion. Yeah, okay. So this pen writes really nice, and it's pretty similar in size to a Midori pen. I guess the Midori is slightly taller, but the girth is relatively the same. It's actually medium. So let's put medium. And the Midori kind of writes a little bit fatter than the Galen leather. Okay, so my next pen is a Kaweco, but it's the Perkeo, which is not a pocket pen. And this is a kind of like a starter pen, in my opinion. It has the black body with the like pink top. For a steel nib, it writes really nice. It has a little bit of feedback, but it's still pretty smooth. And the ink is Iro Shizuku Shikuren. I could be saying that wrong. But what I've noticed is that this pen actually writes really juicy, and this ink has really good shading. Especially on the downstroke where the color kind of pulls. And then the nib is a fine. So it's writing pretty similar to the Midori and Galen leather. My Platinum Prefounte, which is a new acquisition. And I got it in the fine. I knew it was going to be very, very fine. But it writes wonderfully for a $11 pen. Now the ink is also a new acquisition, and it is from Ferrisville Press. And I think it shows its features best on Tomoe River paper. This one is the Mirror of Moraine. I think it's with one R. Okay, so I find that the color has this really sharp edges on Tomoe River. The shading is not as strong as some other inks, but it's still a pretty color. Pretty summer color. It reminds me of, oops, sorry. Reminds me of like a ocean. So my next one is the Sailor 1911. I want to say it's this, I forgot the naming, what they call these ones, but these are the ones that are typically under $50. And what I did with this one is switch it out. So this is the one I was referring to earlier, where this nib belongs on the mini, and I switched it out. I switched the nibs. Now this one does have a converter, and because it fits in the body, and it actually is writing really nice. So I'm thinking that the nib doesn't write well in this pen because of the way that this one is made. So it dries out pretty quickly. This one is a Sailor. I forgot what they call this body style, but I'm just gonna say it's the Sailor 1911, and this ink is also new to me. I only got the sample, which was a 4 mil. It's so pretty. With this pen, or this nib, it's a 14 karat. I really feel the feedback on this nib. This is the hard, medium, fine. And let's do, and you can kind of hear it, but you probably won't be able to hear it on this in this video because my camera is not close enough. But this is the Ferris wheel press Tanzanite Sky. And you can't really see much of the shading with this, but I love how stark blue it is and how sharp my lines are. Next pen is going to be my lovely Sailor. This is the limited edition classic demonstrator Sailor in Cyan blue, and I love this pen. This is the Sailor Pro Gear and this is the standard size. It has a 21 karat medium nib. And nothing special about the ink. It's actually just a black cartridge, Sailor cartridge. I do find that the 21 karat gold nibs are a lot softer than a 14 karat, so I kind of have to write lower to the paper. And I do also find that this ink doesn't flow very well in many of my pens, sailor pens, since it's a sailor cartridge. It's either some hard starts or not starting at all with the cartridge sailor ink. And this is for the sailor ink that is the permanent color, or the permanent black. Pilot Vanishing Point in the Decimo, and this one is in a medium nib. And the ink is actually an Iro Shizuku ink, and it's the gray color, which is more like, it can look like a blue purple. It is called the Iro Shizuku Fuyu Siyun. I'm probably saying that wrong. It has some really nice shading, and it's more of a darker gray, especially with the medium nib. Plus the ink is pretty, it flows well in this pen, and I find that Iro Shizuku inks flow well in many pens. So next is the Laban 325, and this is the one with the ivory barrel and the black cap with the gold trim. This one is a little bit of a heavier pen, but it writes really well. Especially if you have a really wet, flowy ink, it's really nice. So this ink is a little bit drier, somewhat, at least in this pen, and it's the Birmingham Pen Co. Okay, so next we have Pilot Custom 74, and this one is the purple barrel, or violet barrel. And this is with the medium nib. My thoughts have changed on this pen. I used to think that something was wrong with the nib, and at the time when I first got the pen, which was a few years back, I was fairly new to fountain pens. But now that I'm trying it again, I'm realizing that it was just the combination of ink to pen. So this is Watermen Encore Bleu. It's It's a really pretty water blue, and it's not as wet in this pen as I would really like it to be, but it does write well. And there's really pretty shading. All right, almost done. I have this one, which is my Platinum 3776. And I just inked it up. It seems like the ink I use is not working well for this pen. This is a 14 karat medium nib, and the ink I used was an ink I've already talked about, and it's really not coming out well here. I think it is because it's in a cartridge and not a converter. So this is supposed to be Ferris wheel press, moss, what is it? Moss Park Green. So I'm not sure if it is my pen or the way I have it feeding into the nib with the cartridge, or if this is just how it looks in a medium tip pen, which this is a Japanese medium, so it is a little bit on the thinner end of medium, and therefore this is just what it looks like, which means that to me, I think it's better in an oblique broad than it is in a fine pen or a medium pen. It seems like it's skipping, but it's not, just the color is really light in this medium nib. Last but not least is my FPR pen, and it looks like this. It is an ebonite pen. I got it from Fountain Pen Revolution. They have a website and they sell unique pens. I think this was made in India, and it doesn't really smell so much like rubber, like ebonite, how people describe ebonite to smell. This is my first ebonite pen, so I don't know. But, wow, I didn't use this for a long time, and that was because I thought it was leaking. Little did I know, now that I know more about pens and I've been revisiting older pens that I haven't been using for a while because I think, or at least I thought something was wrong with them. And I just felt like, oh, I'll deal with it another time. I'm realizing that some of them are things I can fix, adjust, and they work just fine. So this is actually a flex. Nib, and it wrote right away. I actually had this pen exposed to the air while I was cleaning the cap because I thought that this pen was leaking, and it wasn't. It was just that there was residue in the cap from the last time I inked it, and the residue just never got cleaned. So every time I would hold my my pen, I'd always get ink on my hands. And now that I finally changed the ink from in this pen, I realize it's not the pen leaking, it's just the residue from the last time I was using it. Now it's fine, it's not leaking on me. So this is a flex nib. It is very flexy, and from what I recall, the price of this pen was really decent. It wasn't expensive, and I think it was under $50. They call this the Treveni Junior Ebonite. So this is actually a pretty standard pen size. I wouldn't personally say it's a junior, but they're calling it a junior, and it writes really nice and it flexes really well. So this ink is my BPC Birmingham Pen Co. Blockhouse Sepia. And the cool thing is that even though it's a flex nib, it still writes well just with general writing. You have to put some effort into flexing it, but not so much to where it's hard to make really curly letters. And yeah, I really like this combination, and it kind of matches the barrel with this brown. Let me do a comparison of the pens. So these are the last 6 pens I just tested. Let's try to get them all in frame so you can see it. So this one is pretty big, and then comes the 74, and then the others are relatively the same. The next set of pens and there you go. So these are more pocket and these are standard size. And that's pretty much it. Let me know what you guys think, what I should do differently for next time I do my inking. If you want like a different direction, a different angle, and yeah. So I will catch you guys in the next video. I hope you liked it. Bye.